They say behind every great man is an even greater woman. Well, they don't. But if they did, this series would have been called Behind Every Great Man is a Bunch of Women Who Would Have Preferred It if he just shut up and sat down on the throne while they ran everything. Because, let's face it, royal men were often little more than figureheads, while the real power was held by the women behind them. Queens, princesses, empresses, duchesses, countesses, regents, mothers and wives who had a greater impact on the course of history than many a king or emperor ever did, but not without some pretty hefty downsides. Join me as we look at the daily struggles of one of those women. And a big thanks to my supporters for making it so. I don't have to struggle with the same amount of stress as Queen Isabella of Spain did every single day. Isabella of Castile became Queen of Spain in 1474 after her father's death. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon had been arranged by their families years before, but they didn't actually get hitched until after both of them were crowned. Together they successfully completed the Reconquista by conquering the last Muslim stronghold in Spain and forcing its inhabitants to convert to Christianity. Leave the country or die. During their reign, Spain turned from a second-rate power to one of the most powerful nations in Europe, largely due to Isabella's shrewdness and ability to manage the royal finances. She also implemented sweeping changes throughout the country, including establishing Spain's first national university, creating the position of the Holy Tribunal to go after people accused of witchcraft and heresy, and sponsoring Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic, which led to Spain becoming a major player in overseas exploration and colonization. But she wasn't perfect, and her legacy is tainted by some pretty awful stuff, like being responsible for the deaths of thousands of people accused of witchcraft and heresy, and also having an affair with one of her subjects that resulted in a baby girl, which she then gave over to be raised in secret, and whose existence she tried to keep hidden for the rest of her life. And if that sounds stressful, just wait until you hear what the rest of her day was like. Wake up. Isabella woke up between 6 and 8 a.m., depending on how late she'd stayed up playing bridge with her ladies-in-waiting, which was usually pretty late because she loved to win. Though recently her ladies-in-waiting had caught on to her cheating and refused to play with her anymore, which meant that lately she'd been waking up earlier. Then she got dressed in one of the 30 to 50 dresses made especially for her that morning by her seamstresses, depending on where she was going and what she was doing that day. She liked to look good. While her ladies-in-waiting got dressed in their own elaborate outfits, a team of 8 to 12 barbers and servants dressed her husband, King Ferdinand, who was much more concerned about looking regal than he was about looking good. Then they all met together in the royal chapel for a mass that Isabella largely paid attention to, although not always in the way that you'd think a devout Catholic monarch should. After that, it was breakfast, which was usually something light, like the dozens of eggs that her ladies-in-waiting ate every day, so that Isabella could harvest their yolks to use as makeup. Then it was time for the business of the day. Unlike her husband, who preferred to take naps when he wasn't busy hunting or waging war, Isabella worked hard to keep Spain running smoothly and efficiently. So she met with ambassadors, issued edicts, granted noble titles, and received petitioners, occasionally having to remind herself that she was the queen of an entire nation, not just the head of a household. And as such, she should probably treat her ladies-in-waiting and servants better. Maybe buy them new clothes, instead of forcing them to watch her play bridge with her old ones. Then it was lunch, which was usually a light meal, unless it was the week before payday, in which case it was a feast fit for a king and queen, since neither of them had yet realized that they weren't as rich as they used to be. After that, it was back to work, which for Isabella meant getting in her carriage and visiting one of her many residences around the city to inspect building projects and see how her many building projects were coming along, as well as to check out the latest fashions and make sure that her portrait painters were staying true to the latest fashions. After all, everyone knew that when the queen wore green, the whole country started wearing green. Then it was back to the palace for dinner, which was usually a small, intimate affair with only a few nobles present, although sometimes it was a huge banquet with dozens of nobles and members of the clergy present. But no matter how big or small the dinner was, Isabella always sat at the center of a huge table in the middle of the room, so that she could be close to the action, and so that nobody could sneak poison into her food. Even after her ladies-in-waiting reminded her that there was unto a single documented case of a queen of Spain being poisoned, a fear that had kept generations of cooks awake at night, and that she was pretty much at the top of the food chain, and therefore very unlikely to be poisoned. Simply because someone wanted her dead still, she didn't take any chances. Finally, After everybody else had gone to bed, she played bridge alone by candlelight until 2 or 3 a.m., making sure to cheat to win every hand, so that she could pretend that she still had friends. So how would you fare living the life of Queen Isabella of Spain? Let's find out. You wouldn't last a day as Queen Isabella of Spain, because you wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of knowing that your stupid decisions could affect literally millions of people, especially when those decisions were as important as whether or not you wanted to fund an Italian merchant's plan to sail west to find spices. You also wouldn't be able to put up with the hundreds of advisors and courtiers constantly trying to get in your face and tell you what a great job you were doing, even though you knew you weren't doing a very good job at all. Finally, you would survive a day as Queen Isabella of Spain, because your inability to accept that other people might be better at things than you are would cause you to micromanage everyone, which would drive them crazy and eventually lead to open rebellion. Or you could be more realistic and admit that you wouldn't last a day as Queen Isabella of Spain, because while you love eggs, you couldn't possibly eat the hundreds upon hundreds of them that her ladies-in-waiting did every day. Hey there, I'm here to talk about a website that will teach you everything from ancient Egyptian history to modern geopolitics. Brilliant is my favorite way to level up my own knowledge, because they make learning fun with thousands of interactive lessons in science, computer science and math. I like the scientific thinking course because it really makes you think. But they have tons of other amazing courses too, like the Introduction to Linear Algebra course. It's rare to find educational content that's as engaging as it is informative, but Brilliant manages to do it with every single lesson. I've learned so much from Brilliant, and it's helped me to understand the world around me a little bit better. Learning doesn't have to be stressful, and Brilliant is proof of that. The biggest problem with learning on your own is that it can be difficult to know where to start and how to stay motivated. Brilliant has interactive lessons that are carefully crafted by award-winning teachers and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, and more. That means you're getting top-level instruction without having to pay tuition. The lessons are designed to fit into your life, with bite-sized pieces that are easy to digest and save your progress automatically, so you can pick up right where you left off. I hope you're enjoying this series as much as I'm enjoying learning with Brilliant. Now let's get back to the video. Time for the first mystery. In 1931, archaeologists discovered a tomb in the ancient Greek city of Sidon, which today is part of Lebanon. Inside the tomb they found 2 skeletons, a man and a woman, along with a variety of grave goods, including a golden diadem, or jeweled headband, which was likely meant for the woman. The discovery was significant because the skeleton of the man seemed to indicate that he was around 5 feet tall, which was shorter than average for ancient Greek men. And he had a large misshapen head, with unusually small eyes, ears, and nose, which suggested that he wasn't Greek at all, but actually one of the mysterious Canaanite people who lived in the region during the time period in which the Greeks came to dominate the Mediterranean. Some scholars believe that the man was a member of the local ruling class, while others thought he was an ordinary Canaanite peasant. But what was his relationship to the woman in the tomb? Was she his wife, a member of his household, or perhaps a captured enemy who had been sacrificed to ensure his safe passage into the afterlife? Whatever the answer, the golden diadem suggests that she was an important person in Canaanite society, even if that society was largely unknown to the outside world. Time for the culture segment. Imagine that you're an archaeologist excavating a site in ancient Egypt. You're carefully brushing dirt off a mummy case when suddenly you uncover a small inscription that reads, "May Ra grant peace to the Ka of Thutmose." But there's a problem. This particular mummy case is empty. There's no body inside. So where is Thutmose? Was he buried elsewhere? Did his remains end up lost or destroyed over the centuries? Or was this case meant for someone else who ended up never being mummified? And what does the inscription tell us about the person who commissioned the case? What kind of person would want to honor their loved one with such a lavish display of wealth and power? As you continue to excavate, you uncovered artifacts that tell you more about Thutmose's life. A small statue of him standing in front of a palace, a piece of papyrus with his name written in red ink, a collection of jewelry that was likely made in Kenya. And then there's the amulet. An amulet with the head of the baboon god Thoth on one side and an inscription that reads, "Thutmose, son of the pharaoh." Suddenly, you have a lot more questions. Who was Thutmose? Why was he important enough to have a mummy case made for him, despite never being mummified? And what happened to his body? And why was he called the son of the pharaoh? Unless, of course, he was. Finally, it's time for the social segment. As a young princess growing up in a grand palace, you have everything you could ever want. Luxurious accommodations, endless amounts of food, fine clothing, expensive jewelry, hundreds of servants to cater to your every need, and probably a couple of golden retrievers too. Your days are filled with parties, festivals, banquets, and balls. And you've never had to worry about anything in your life. Then suddenly, everything changes. Your parents have died and now you're the queen. You have to put on an act. Act demure, humble, and kind, while secretly plotting how you are going to ruin your cousin's reputation and steal her inheritance. You meet with ambassadors from other courts, attend religious services, and try to keep your unruly court in order. And all the while you're trying to figure out what to do with your hair. If this sounds overwhelming to you, imagine trying to do all that while also raising children, managing a household, keeping an eye on your husband, and trying to make sure that the kingdom doesn't collapse into chaos. Oh yeah. And you also have to worry about witches trying to kill you, and an army trying to invade the kingdom. And that's just a normal day in the life of a medieval queen.